Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, we're going to make a few changes along the front fence of our garden here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've always had Zone 7B, but the updated zone map says we're definitely in 8A. I'm still treating this garden as if we're in Zone 7, just because I'm prepared to cover anything that's only hardy into Zone 8, because the zone map is your average low temperature. So despite the fact that our average low temperatures are higher over the last 11 years since that zone map was updated, we've still continued to have temperatures during that period of time that were definitely Zone 7 and even a couple of Zone 6 temperatures during that period of time. So I'm just throwing that out there. I now say 8A, but I'm still treating it as if I'm in Zone 7. And I'm prepared to cover things in Zone 8. This front fence was put in as part of this garden project maybe almost 2 years ago now at this point. At some point, we'll do some, I let the wood dry. It was very, very wet wood. You know, during COVID there, lumber was coming out so fast. It was just, you know, these were really, really, they had been pressure treated and then not allowed to dry out at all. So they were super, super heavy in terms of what they should have been. So I've let them dry out. I'm either going to paint it at some point or stain it or just protect it. Don't know. I haven't really made that decision yet. I'm sure I'm going to get some opinions down below the video, and that's perfectly fine. I welcome them. But this area has never been our favorite part of this garden. We basically threw a bunch of things in here on this side and haven't really thought through the fact that it's really the entryway into the garden. And so right now, as you can see, all the perennials have pretty much died back to the ground. A few things are still poking up, and we actually have some buds on some perennials out here. It's just wild. I'm shooting this on New Year's Eve. But there's no evergreen thing. There's barely any evergreen things out here. I have one boxwood. I have a little pine, have an agave out here, and that is the total of all the evergreen things. So we want to add a couple of evergreen things. While these perennials are dormant, I'm going to dig some of them out and put them in 1-gallon containers, and then we may use them in this landscape or just give them away or whatever at some point. But there are some nice perennial things out here that need to be rearranged. The other issue is some of the perennials are getting this tall and they're just completely blocking the fence, and they're pretty in flower, but kind of look a little bit weedy. And again, it's the entryway into the garden. And so we just want to get that a little bit under control. So I'm going to jump in here first, dig out some of these perennial things that we're taking out. There are some salvias. There's a penstemon. There's some ground cover sedum. There's several things I'm just going to keep out here because they're low growing. Anything that's low growing is going to stay. It'll look a little cruel pulling these things out, and it is right here at the beginning of January, but they'll be totally fine once they get established. You know, this is a coneflower right here. This one self-seeded, and it's been here long enough that it'll just be completely unharmed by pulling it up out of the ground right now. We'll just pack the containers together somewhere, put some leaves around them, and they'll be good to go. There's all I do there. And then here's a verbena. Still up. If enough soil doesn't come with it, I gotta pack a little more around it. But give them a couple bounces, and there you go. So there's a penstemon back here that actually has flowers on it at the end of December. I think a little bit of protection from this asphalt and the dark mulch, sunlight hitting it in the morning. Fence is a backdrop. We've only had a few nights in the 20s at this point, and it's still doing its thing back here. Agave's grown a lot this past year and looks pretty good. It got pretty dry on us for a while, so this pine is losing a few needles, but looks fine. Then there's a sedum underneath that. There's a dormant clematis. I've definitely missed a few perennials that are out here that have died completely back. I'll just pop them out of the ground once spring rolls around. But I want to take this opportunity to clean this area up, and I'll take this I'll just take the shovel and turn it a little bit on an angle and throw this soil up in this bed and get a nice edge along. Here's another coneflower or something here. It's 30 degrees or something out here this morning. My pots are frozen together. Gotta do better than that. Vinca annual from this season. We took all of our container plants and put them in the ground so that we could go out of town for a while, and now it's like a shopping center. It's like a garden center we have in our own garden here, and some other things that have been shipped to us. So we're trying to figure out, you know, what would look good along that front fence. I think just on this right-hand side for today, I'm just going to put one conifer over to the right. We were out at Isley Nursery in Boring, Oregon. See, actually the town is called Boring, Oregon. And did several videos. If you haven't seen those videos, very, very interesting. But one of the plants that we have from them is this arborvitae right here called Primo. It's a really upright, narrow one. And you know, over here in the vegetable garden, it's easy digging. So I popped that out of the ground in one shot there. But this is an upright, narrow growing arborvitae that'll be perfect on that right-hand side of that fence to give some height. I think we're going to leave another little gap there open and make decisions in the spring because we don't have everything here that we're going to have. We've got some other things ordered as well. And so this will complete what I'm going to do on the right-hand side, and then we'll jump over to the left. Was able just to carry it out here that way. Let's see. I'm going to stick this one in right about here. This soil has really changed quite a bit. This was probably our heaviest clay soil. We've got bulbs coming up everywhere. Bulbs are way early. All kinds of things are way early. We've got, as I look around the neighborhood right now, most of the Camellia japonicas are in full bloom, and it's definitely, you know, early for that to be happening. This one's been in a container for 2 years. I like to buy these little quart conifers around Christmas time at all the garden centers tend to have. You can leave them in a container for a couple years and then transition them to your, to your garden after that, and really get years out of them. So the price is right, you know, after you've gotten so much out of something. That's probably a little bit low. Even the clay that I'm still pulling up, out of here, like right here, this is an example of what all of this looked like beforehand. You know, you can make bricks, you know, out of this material, but even I see some color in it now, where worms and other things are carrying all this compost, this broken down leaves and other material that we're using out here. It's getting better and better and better. The Primo arborvitae there, one of the better boxwoods here, agave, green penguin pine. This will get some sort of evergreen thing in it. Don't know what it'll be yet. We've got several options back in the garden. I'm thinking about shooting a video on just cryptomeria. We have, I don't know, probably 6 here in this garden, some in storage and some in the ground, and then others that I want to go and talk about. So I think I'm going to end up putting some sort of cryptomeria here as part of that video. If we slide over to the other side, Holly is doing her job out here this morning. This is being on camera. That looks better. This looks a lot better. It's edged over there. I need to blow the sweep up and clean up around the front of it, but it looks so much better. We have in this spot a Monarda that's bee free variety. It's beautiful, and I mean really maybe the best Monarda I've ever seen, hands down, no question about it. It gets this tall and it's beautiful, but it's right next to the entryway here, and that 3 or 4 weeks it's in bloom, it's an absolute showstopper, and then the rest of the time, you know, it's not the best thing to have right here next to this entryway. So I definitely want to, what I need to do with this Monarda is simply slide it down here somewhere. I'm going to pull up a couple of the clumps of it, get them in containers, and then in the spring come back in here and decide, you know, it may be over there, you know, that it ends up. It's a great plant. It's okay with the height of the fence. It's not as tall as some of the other things, so it's not completely out of proportion. But again, it's not attractive the whole season. I think I need something that's more a 12-month good look, you know, a plant that looks good 12 months out of the year. What are you doing right there? So again, I'm just gonna pull some of this up. It is also wandered from where it was originally planted, which can be an issue with perennials. Sometimes you gotta go say, hey, I didn't plant you over there. I gotta go, I gotta go put you back in some spot. Here's a clump of it. I've got, it moved over here, it migrated over here into some tulips, some species tulips, and I don't want to dig the tulips up, so I don't know what I'm going to do there, actually. But this was one plant that was purchased. This is the thing about these herbaceous perennials that do migrate, is I've gone from one plant to multiples. It probably needed to be divided a bit anyway. So there's 3. I probably could get another one. Again, I don't know what I want to do with these tulips here. There's 4. Okay, so I'm gonna find something that's evergreen that will stay lower for that spot. There's a few more of these coneflowers. I need a bigger container for a couple of these. We have a dwarf ginkgo out here called Troll. Definitely is staying, but we have an anemone that is just absolutely eating this space. It's very, very happy out here. I see one more coneflower as well, right there. Yeah, there'll be coneflowers out here, but there'll be ones that stay a little smaller than these. These may move to the back garden or, again, be given away. I wouldn't be digging up marginal plants right now if these were perennials that were barely hardy here. But these are zone 5, you know, perennials. They're not going to have any problem being popped out of the ground, being put in those pots. I'll put the pots close together, put some leaves over top of them. As soon as we see some new growth on them in the spring, we'll make decisions on whether they go back in the ground or, you know, move on to some, you know, they get rehomed in some way, I guess would be the term for it. This anemone, I have no idea. It's just creeping, so I have no idea how it's gonna, I don't want to take it all up. I'm just trying to get it size control. Look at that. Look at that. Bought one plant, and now look at all those. This one bloomed beautifully. I could probably divide that little clump right there into 10 plants if I wanted to, but I'll probably just keep it as one for the winter time while it's colder outside. And then they could be divided in the spring. All seems cruel, but it's really not. Even this piece right here, it just has the roots running about. We'll have no problem coming back up in that container. We have the one blue agave on the other side of the fence that you saw earlier, and we have one called porcupine that we got from Plant Delights Nursery that they sent us. It's a very small growing agave. It's actually going to go right here next to the entryway. It's a spiky little thing, so I don't want to put it so close that it gets anyone, but it only gets maybe a foot wide. Beautiful, really interesting form. It has these white edges on all the individual leaves. Fantastic plant. It's not a plant that I would put in the ground in January here in our area, and it has nothing to do with cold. The thing is really capable of taking quite a bit of cold, but it doesn't like wet feet. So when I plant it, I need to amend the soil with some sort of expanded slate or something like that to make sure the water goes through and dries out. And I'm not going to plant it when peak wet soil season. So I'll wait, and probably close to April, to plant this, and then again I'll put it up high and dry. Same thing we did with the other one. There's a video on that, planting that other blue agave, if you want to take a look at that. So one thing that will go in the ground today, this is a new dwarf abelia. This one's called Suntastic Peach. It will get some orangey color in it in the wintertime, but it has none of that right now just because we haven't had, you know, really any significant cold on it. I got this unboxed about 2 weeks ago from Mobile, and it's got frost, literally has frost on it right this second. So I think I'll start to take on some of those orange hues pretty soon. But this is a no maintenance, low growing evergreen shrub that will bloom during the summertime. It fits the bill for what we like, which is inviting pollinators into the garden. Has that chartreuse color during the summertime, during most of the growing season. That is a kind of a theme of this garden. We've got two other dwarf variegated abelias out here, Radiance and Miss Lemon. This one will stay even smaller, and you can really almost tell by the foliage. It's such a little narrow, very narrow foliage variety. But this, I'm gonna put this one in the ground right about here. And then I think ultimately that Monarda or bee balm will end up on this side of it, and then there'll be something else evergreen, maybe something that creeps around that agave on that side. I've got a really nice cotoneaster that may fit the bill for that already back in the storage area, but I don't know if that's what's going to be used or not. We may think about it some before we do that. Again, this soil is so radically changed out here, and I haven't done as much to this as the other places in the garden. But it really is very different. But you know, you can get down there where all that red clay resides. This is only a 2-gallon container, so it doesn't need that much of a hole. These abelia are extremely resilient to sun. Really, actually grow pretty well in the shade, but these variegated ones probably won't have as much color on them in the shade. But abelia are really adaptable to sun, shade, wet, dry, not wet, but certainly very dry conditions. Let's see what the roots on this thing look like. This is typical of abelia when you pull them out of containers. They don't root in the containers very well. It's one of the actual issues with availability on these. The tops grow really, really well, but it's hard to get them to root out into the container really, really well. So anyway, it will absolutely love this spot. It's really super sunny here for a good portion of the day, all year long. These are zone 6 to 10 hardy, 6 to 9 or 6 to 10 hardy. I want to make sure that I leave it up just a little bit ultimately. I'm tamping it lightly, not stomping all the air out of the soil. Just a light tamp all the way around. Smooth everything back out. Re-edge. I want to I put up a video on my favorite tool, and it's this trenching shovel, which is unbelievable. I have now done this entire project with one tool. I've edged, I've cleaned up. I mean, I need to get a broom out here, but I've done a reasonable job of cleaning up after myself. I need a blower or a broom to finish cleaning it off. But I've edged, I've dug out the perennials, I just planted that, and again, it's all with just one tool, and it's light and easy to use. I've got an old one of these that everybody has seen that's about 4 inches shorter than this, but I've worn it out over the course of 20-some years of using it, especially for jobs like this. This will wear that metal down over years, but just a great tool. So there's the beginning of this project, and we've at the end of this, by middle spring, I'd like to have a place where people can pull up in front of the garden and immediately get hit with, it's amazing, instead of having to go into the fence, and because that's how it usually is. They're inside somewhere and then they go, whoa, this is pretty crazy. All the color and everything that we have out here. So there'll also be some annuals planted around the front. A few perennials will go back in, but I think I really want this to be more of a 12-month space. And just kind of thinking that through. I always said that about foundations too. I love plants that go to sleep. A lot of the plants that go to sleep conserve their energy, and then they come out and they put on that really grand show because they rested. We're talking about herbaceous perennials like I dug out of the ground, and deciduous shrubs, that just come out in the spring and just put on these amazing shows. So I have a great appreciation for them, and deciduous trees and everything. But there are places, and I think around the envelope of a foundation or the entryway to a garden, where it's nice to have some stability, where it's has a similar look to it year round and is always inviting. And then you flip out a few things in it to make it interesting on a year-to-year basis. So thank you guys so much for following along with the channel, and this will continue to develop during the 2024 spring season. It's incredible how fast time flies, right? For real. Okay.